Well, good evening. I am going to try to talk about the next verse in Revelation chapter 11, verse 14 and 15, following the previous, verses. And that brings us to the verse 11:14 says, "The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Surely without delay, soon, or by surprise, suddenly, or by implication of ease, readily, lightly," is interesting. Quickly and lightly. Let me give you a little history of these woes. A woe says that it means that it's primary exclamation of grief. Sometimes it's translated as alas, but I think the context really should dictate that, and sometimes I think it's inappropriate to translate it as alas, because alas just gives you the impression that saying next to nothing, but an exclamation of grief, that gives you something to go on what it's talking about, and that's actually most common in the things that Jesus said. When he said woe, which is the same word, pronounced uahi, he was actually talking to cities or people about, like in this example, Chorazin, who's saying that if the things that happened in your town, in your city, were done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. So it's an example that he's sending out a warning, actually, is what's happening here. There's another one of Jesus. Woe to the world because of offenses, for it needs be that offenses come, but woe to man by whom offense cometh. In other words, woe to the person that actually brings about the offense. The offense is going to come because the next level provides the Luciferian space alien souls who are going to see to it that their agenda is developed and exercised and applied and forwarded. And that's going to actually lead to humans making choices that are against other humans, because in order to do that, since they want to get off the planet, they need humans to advance their technology, because the space aliens, when they fell, and then they were forced to go underground by the next level, or under the sea or under the ice, however that happened, in all those ways. I don't think they had the facilities to build spacecrafts. I think they were provided spacecrafts, or from the previous civilization may have developed to a point to where they were also the humans and human equivalents were making spacecrafts, possibly, I don't know. And so they got them the same way they're getting them now, by taking over humans and by growing humans in their laboratories underground, like it was reported in Dulce, New Mexico, which may or may not be where it's happening, or it was happening. I have no idea if it's continuing, but the indications were pretty. There were quite a few leaks that something was going on down there in Dulce, New Mexico, and I don't doubt that in a number of places. But in the Southwest, especially New Mexico and Arizona, I would suspect where the most was happening, because that's the area where the next level decided to come, and that some of the space aliens actually, according to Doe, created facsimile crashes of spacecrafts in order to look the same as the next level, and also to help advance the development of their technology, because they knew humans would do that. They would try to figure out how these things worked. And then by doing that, then all they got to do is take over those humans, which is not that hard to do, basically by occupying their vehicles, and brainwashing them from a distance. They don't have to be next to them. They can, like Doe said, they can send thoughts to people and to get people to think and act in the ways that they want them to think and act. And so they go for the people that have the most influence, according to Doe, T and Doe. So basically, all the world leaders are potentially puppets for, and all their supporters, like in the higher echelons of the government and militaries, especially, because the politicians a lot of times, like in the United States, are temporary, so they're not as. A lot of times they're related to families too, though. So, it's all interrelated. The Illuminati and the Masons and all these organizations that have cropped up from the Europeans and from wherever else they were in Egypt and Greece and Rome, of course. So all those were producing genetic strains that the Luciferian space aliens were interfacing with. Whether, I don't know if they were allowed to have influence over them in between being allowed to circulate among humans with their spacecrafts. I doubt it, because I think the next level didn't want to confuse humans by that too soon. Even though it's not that the next level wants to confuse humans ever, but they provide those space aliens because they want this to be a free will astronaut training program, so that souls that are nurtured can find vehicles that have the programming from their genetics, their background, their ancestors, to be able to accept the realities of beings from outer space, or those ideas. They have to be nurtured to get to that point. And that nurturing takes place by the next level and their crew over time. And you can see it in paintings from the 1500s, where there was paintings of a person sitting inside a comet, going through the atmosphere, the outer space, but clearly, a person sitting inside this comet. And how Mark Twain or Samuel Clemens talked about how he came with Comet Halley's, and that he was going to be disappointed if he didn't leave with Halley's, and he actually did leave shortly after Halley's Comet came to perihelion on its return, 78 years later after it arrived, and that he wrote that the cost to, in the movie Captain Stormfield's Trip to Heaven, he wrote that the cost to go to heaven, the fare to ride the tail of a comet to heaven was $5.75, and Doe and the 38 each had $5.75 on them, on that person. I think it was a $5 bill and 3/4, I believe, which was interesting because years before that, I thought those numbers were related to the two procedures we had. One was whenever we left the craft, because we didn't have our own money or anything in the craft, everything was put into the pot, into the purser, for the craft to run. And T&O had a crew assigned to managing that money for T&O. Actually, T&O assigned that crew initially, and then Doe kept on with those same procedures, and so at one point our procedure first was when we first got out of craft tasks. In other words, jobs in the world. And at first, like many of the jobs, were working in restaurants as a waitress, or a waiter, or a cook, or in a retail store, and we improved from then, and also began to take jobs that were more able to have a schedule that T&O could use for the classroom teaching, so they could have a regular, so that everybody would be there during certain times, so they can count on holding meetings. Because otherwise it was defeating the purpose to have jobs if some had to go to their jobs at, for dinner hour, or others had to go to their jobs for breakfast or hour, for those that worked in the restaurant business. So T&O nudged us out of the restaurant business and into the office business, and that's how we got into computers. But anyway, so during that time when we first got jobs, one of the things that T&O started was that you would sign in and out. At first it was 3/4. 3/4 actually, literally 25-cent pieces. Because the telephones, worked on quarters at the time, I believe, for the most part. Yeah, I think it was way beyond when there was nickels and dimes. So I don't think we had smaller change. We used to have it, they used to have like a box with a whole bunch of envelopes in it, and in each envelope was like 3/4. And then there was a little sign-out sheet that would have the date and time and your name, Soy Odie or And Odie or Jim Odie or whatever the name was, or the partnership name. Actually, you wouldn't take one for each person, because we did almost everything as partnerships together, except when we went to our aircraft tasks, we sometimes drove together with a task partner at that time. It wasn't necessarily our craft partner, the person that we were a partner with while we were in the craft. Instead, it was a person that we were going to an out-of-craft task with, or we were being driven to an out-of-craft task and we were in the car with, carpooling sometimes. Anyway, so we'd sign that out and we would put it in our pocket, and then if we didn't need to use it to make a phone call back to the craft, that would be the only reason we'd use it. If we had some kind of emergency and we needed to make a phone call to the craft to tell them that we had an emergency and they needed to come and they would, make arrangements to come pick us up if, for instance, if a car broke down or something like that. Because there were payphones everywhere then, and so you didn't have to worry about not having a cell phone like you do now. Even though, since everybody has a cell phone now, usually you can get somebody to loan it to you for a few minutes, or make a call for you. But anyway, so it was 3/4 then. And so then some years later, I don't remember if it was while T was in her vehicle still, or not. I suspect it was, though. They changed the 3/4 to a $5 bill. It wasn't necessarily always a $5 bill. It could have been dollars and change even sometimes. I guess I don't remember exactly, but I remember it was $5, and because we signed it in and out again, and that was for the same purpose. Of course, things had expanded a little bit, and also Tino wanted to make sure we had some money in case for some reason we were delayed coming home, and we needed to buy something from the store in order to hold us over, or get a little gas for some reason. If something happened, because gas wasn't that expensive then, and so for a couple of bucks you could get enough gas to get you probably back to the craft. If for some reason you were out of gas, I don't know why that would happen, but it was for anything that was like that for an emergency purpose. That's the bottom line. So I shouldn't be adding too many of my things. Well, I mean, I'm not really adding because those things were all part of the idea that was put across to us. Gas or telephone, or even getting a snack, even though, well, at that time, I think when that started, we weren't on any strict diets, because those only started after T left the vehicle. And those said the reason that was the case was because T didn't need to go through that. And though did go through it, whether he needed it or not, because he was being the example and was and managing all that. And the way he would manage it was by having his own experience with different foods and the fasting and everything that we did. Even though T started the idea of overcoming our likes and dislikes, because they weren't considered to be addictions. The food, T said food wasn't an addiction. But they started with an experimentation on sleep at one point, and then experimentation on consuming food. And when they started the food consuming experimentation, which was basically to help us face our likes and dislikes, the same as with sleep, in a sense, they started with what they called pink drinks. And those pink drinks were pink because the protein powder that they brought in, that they bought, made the liquid with water that we included in the drink pink. And then T&O also made added a bunch of supplements like wheat germ and lecithin, and they gradually added supplements, and then saw how people were reacting to it and the reports they would get from people, because you weren't supposed to just tough it out necessarily. I mean, you were supposed to try to tough it out, and try to make it work and accept it. But if the vehicle was having problems because of it, and you couldn't ignore them, like a rash would break out, my team don't want to know about it, and so you would report that to them in a note, and then what they would do about it was up to them to decide. And but based on that, they started, and also probably their own experimentation. I can't say for sure that they were using the drinks, but I know they knew how they tasted and everything. But I don't know if they were using the drinks on a regular basis or not, because the experiment was for the students to overcome their likes and dislikes and follow and the biggest part of that was to follow their instructions. And be happy following their instructions, and try to make it work, and try to be positive about it, and not complain about it. If you complain about it, like, oh, this is chalky tasting, or, because the pink drinks were kind of chalky tasting. I mean, I didn't actually have that complaint. I didn't have any complaints that I was aware of about them. I kind of liked them. But I'm not saying everybody was in that boat, because everybody, you know, I mean, I think the whole gamut of responses was probably among the 40 or so, or 40, 50 students that were involved in that first program with the pink drinks. But I got really sick at one point during the time of the pink drinks, and I got an attack of what do you call it? When you get dizzy. Dizziness to where I couldn't stand up, because I couldn't find, I had no equilibrium, and I was nauseous at the same time, and felt like I was going to throw up. I didn't feel like I could eat anything or hold it down, but the nausea didn't get so bad that I couldn't still drink the pink drinks, and I could get some relief from the dizziness if I laid down on my side. But as soon as I turned on my back or on my front, which we had a procedure not to sleep on our bellies because of how it could stimulate our sensuality of our, you know, our plumbing there, you know, anyway, so, you know, by pressing against the mattress. And so a procedure was not to sleep on our side. I mean, sleep on our side or back. But so I was dizzy if I did that, if I slept on my back too, so I would sleep on my side. But anyway, so what Tiendo did after I was, and actually that started with like a fever, I think. I remember I got really sick, and I threw up in one of the bedrooms, one of the bunk rooms, the rest chambers we called them, right on the carpet. Oh my gosh, right on the, you know, floor of the carpet, and I think I threw up right before that in the right in my bed. It was like it came out so suddenly. I don't even know where it came from, and I don't know if that happened before the pink drinks exactly, but it was in the same craft where the pink drinks started, and that's also where astrology started as a game. Tiendo brought in a whole bunch of books, and that was in I think the San Antonio no, actually I think it was in a little town outside the outskirts of San Antonio, but which is also where we started out of craft tasks. But well, mostly we actually started them before that, while we were still actually living in campgrounds. But they didn't last. We just did those for a week or two, and I worked at a Kmart in Provo, Utah, actually, at that point. And so just to give you that, since I mentioned it, I should say a little bit about it, I think. And so I got sick with the dizziness and the nausea, and ended up, Tiendo added yeast rolls, like clover leaf rolls. There were 3 parts to them, and that's when they also started the yeast lab, which was adjacent to basically the Nutrilab. It was the nutrition lab, which was the, well, humans would call it kitchen. But they had already started the program to where we were thinking of food as fuel for our vehicles and for the health of our vehicles, so that we would have good function out of our vehicles and our mind and our brain, so that we could proceed with our tasks without interference from our vehicles in that way, because of lack of nutrition, you know, and all that. So so they added the yeast rolls, and that seemed to take care of it for me, for the most, at that point. And I continued to drink the yeast rolls, and we continued to have the pink drinks. I mean, eat the yeast rolls and drink the pink drinks for Well, we had out-of-craft tasks. I mean, I used to keep it in the cooler in the restaurant where I worked in a Pizza Hut in Kerrville. That was the town. I was outside San Antonio in Kerrville, Texas. And I had a job at the Pizza Hut there, and I was like, I did everything in there. I was like a manager, overseeing like one or two other waitresses, and sometimes, and I was also a waiter, and sometimes I was a pizza maker, and I would go back into the walk-in cooler and get my peak drink and drink it kind of in secret, because I didn't want people questioning me, and what is that, was this weird drink and all that. I mean, that was the procedure. We weren't supposed to talk about anything about the group, because we didn't want to jeopardize our security, because if they found out that there was this weird group, who knows what they would say, and investigators might find out about it, because there were investigators looking for us periodically that we learned about as a fact. And so anyway, so we kept everything secret about who we were and what we were doing. And sometimes we had more than one of us were working at a job, so we didn't also want to show at the same job. So we didn't want to both be drinking the pink drinks, and be seen doing that, and think I didn't even know you guys knew each other, because we tried to keep separate in all ways. And we would like, if we were carpooling, we would even get picked up at different times by different cars, or we didn't do that too much, but maybe at slightly different locations, so that it wasn't too obvious that, and if we got caught, I don't remember. We dealt with things. Tiandor helped us deal with things as they happened, and we didn't have any big problems with that in that regard. Although there were at times little things, but I don't want to get into all those. But so back to the woe. What's the one? Why don't you go to? Well, I did already. Okay, hold on over here. So I already showed how Jesus was, saying woe to the people that he was actually. Here's one. But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. In other words, they make it impossible for people to actually move towards membership in the kingdom of heaven, because of the way they changed the things that were taught by Moses. For you neither go in yourselves, in other words, you're not going to get into heaven, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. In other words, you're going to make it hard on them that are entering to go in. Suffer ye, okay, which is to send for, to forsake, abandoning those that are are coming up. It's interesting that Doe would use that coming into the next level. That's interesting. Same word here in Greek for entering and in, which I found out a lot of times. So you got to take two of these words and put them together. It's probably not necessarily the same word. I mean, it can be repeated sometimes. It seems like some of the prophecy did repeat itself, and there would be a reason for it to repeat itself. It was like, saying it was 2 times this amount of representation of what that word translated to. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that right now, but so the second woe, so that's the background of woe. It's a warning, or I mean, it can be considered a warning, because when Jesus was saying that to them, it was saying, watch out. You should I want you to feel bad about this. I want you to grieve. I want you to get rid of this. I want you to kill this behavior. And have some grief about it. In other words, take it seriously that that this is behavior that you need to change. That was the meaning of repent. Change your mind, actually, is the meaning of repent. Change your mind. In other words, swap out your mind. Swap out the misinformation for true information from the cult of truth, which was the Jesus cult and the Tian-Do cult. So, because mind and spirit is synonymous according to Tian-Do. So what are the ways? So this is the second woe. Now let me back up a little bit to these woes. Let me go back to where they're talked about here over in Revelations. I think oh, I forgot about this. One woe is past. Oh, okay. So that is true that the okay, so the first woe, well, it was actually the previous verse. Let me go back here. Previous verse to 9:12 was 8:13, and that's where it talks about, and I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, which is interesting. That's the midst of heaven. That's the middle heaven. So the mid-sky, the midst of heaven. And heaven was actually all elevated areas above us, Uranus. And this is saying the middle of Uranus. See, Uranus is the idea of elevation, through the idea of elevation. In other words, all areas that are elevated above the physical earth is considered to be heaven. But it's also the sky, by extension heaven, as the abode of God. Well, according to the Jews, there were three heavens. So the sky would be like the first heaven, however far that extends into the atmosphere of the earth. Maybe 50 miles. Who knows how much? I don't know how far. Maybe however far the electromagnetic field goes. Could be considered the first heaven. So, and then the second heaven was like where I think maybe the space aliens were allowed to circulate when they fell, before they fell, when they were still working for the next level as watchers for a brief period of time. And they weren't space aliens then because they were taken over by the space aliens who were but they became well, I'm not able to express that right now clearly. So let me think about that a little bit and then try to express it at a future time. Maybe I'll put it even in the description for this video, what I was trying to say with that, because something about that I'm not seeing correctly, I think, or as detailed as it might be, and referring to things that Tian-Do said. I'm not trying to make things up. I'm always trying to relate everything to things that Tian-Do said, even though, they didn't talk about these verses, so I can't really say that. But I can talk about the fact that Tian-Do said that the heaven was, well, the evolutionary level above human, but it was the literal heavens. And that included what Tian-Do called the near heavens, the near outer space, Actually, I never heard T say that, but I've heard Do talk about it like that, saying that the space aliens were only allowed to circulate in the near outer space. That's why Do said that they weren't no longer space aliens, because we have the idea that space is everywhere, off the planet, past the atmosphere. That's outer space. So they're really you have to call them near space aliens if you wanted to actually be more accurate to what Do taught. So I've been putting space in quotes now to show and talk about it as what it really means, according to what Do said. So so this angel flying through the midheaven, the middle heaven, which is very interesting, is saying, is actually the word lego, to lay forth, is set the discourse. So he's not necessarily saying it with his mind, with his voice, because he's flying through the midheaven. So this is a messenger. This is an angel as a messenger, or a crew member, in any way you want to say it. But it's a crew member with a task to deliver a message, and that message is expressing in a loud voice, which is the word megas, which also means big voice. Doesn't necessarily mean loud as in the volume. It can mean large, high, mighty, sore afraid. So, maybe a serious, very serious, a frightful voice, exclamation voice, maybe, like a woe is an exclamation. So, I mean, saying loud is a little deceiving, maybe, not deceiving, but because I don't think they intended to be deceiving when they translated this. Of course, things like that slipped in at times, and I know, but for the most part, I think the next level probably kept this part pretty accurate, even though T&Do didn't talk about Revelations as being among the scripture that they knew that the next level had made accurate. They talked about the red letter editions of the Bible, the things that Jesus said. But of course Jesus is actually talked about in these Revelations, and described, and Jesus, what Jesus said can be found throughout these Revelations in different places. So I think we can, count on most of it being pretty accurate. So maybe one example of where it may not be accurate might be right here, for example. And voice, of course, means disclosure, like I said, or a tone, or both. A disclosure tone, like at Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where they were hearing those tones in India, I think it was, coming from the sky. And that was before there were drones, and I guess, I don't know when that was. Maybe there could have been something being broadcast by humans in some kind of a airplane or something. I guess that's possible. But I don't know. I'm just wondering about how that might be connected. But I don't remember T&Do saying anything about that. We did see that movie. We were in the campground at the time in Wyoming when they sent us down to Colorado, to Loveland, I think it was, to go to the movies to see that. And we went to E.T. also after that. But it was like an outing for a bunch of us. I mean, a lot of us. We were, at that point, close to 100. So anyway, well, maybe not. Maybe that was when we were back down to somewhere in the 60s, the high 60s, or the mid 60s. So, yeah, I think that was when we were up in Wyoming another year, because we went up there like 3 years in a row during the spring and summer, and then went down to Texas for the fall and winter, with some overlap. Anyway, so this angel flying through the mid-heaven is saying, whoa, 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 3 times. And it's the same word I can show you here each time. And the woe is to the inhabitants of the earth. Now, inhabitants is what? The people that are housed permanently on the earth, to house permanently. Those are residing on the earth, all the dwellers on the earth, all the inhabitants. Okay, so that's everybody. That's not, just some people that are being shown this woe, these woes, these 3 woes. It's everybody. And we had that indication up further in Revelation 11, that there was some communication being given to the inhabitants of the earth, but it was said as people, I think, or the public. Anyway, and earth is also the human kingdom, including the occupants in each application. So it's a solid part of the earth, but if they're talking about inhabitants of the earth, they're talking about the human kingdom on earth. By reason of, or cause of, here's an example of where they had several words, by reason of, but the only one that you click on is of, to get the whole phrase, by reason of, which could also mean because of, among, by reason of, or among, or because of, out, among, from, and a lot of times a number of these words work. Okay, but because of other voices, other or remaining, besides finally furthermore from, wait, I'm in the wrong place. Remaining ones' voices. Now, I don't think I went through this verse. I should be looking at what I said about it, but sometimes I get new ideas when I go through it with what I remember, and I look at these words again, so I can update the things that are in my book, but by these videos, sometimes. So the remnant or the residue of the rest. Okay. So by reason of can also mean for the sake of, I think, if I remember correctly. I don't see it among here as an option. Or just for the action and motion that proceeds from that. Just from, out, of, place, time, or cause. So direct or remote. So after. Well, after is another way of looking at it. In addition to this, so in other words, the earth, by reason of the after voices, the after disclosures that come for the trumpet, of the trumpet, which is the quavering, reverberation, the vibration, the salos, the vibration, the wave. And Tiendo called Ordo actually referred to the second wave or the second rapture as when we went out in 1994, which started actually essentially in 1992 with the Beyond Human tapes. And so that can be looked at as the other voices, the other disclosure wave. How's that? By reason of the other disclosure wave. And this could be actually of the three angels which are yet to sound. And sound is the same word as trumpet. No, it's not. It's the same root. One is Salpigz, S-A-L-P-I-G-Z, X, 4536, and the other one's 4537. Oh, I can see both of them right here. I just did this. So, which go to 4535. So it's all related to sound, blast, wave, the quaver, the idea of vibration. It's a sound vibration, and of course, Tiendo said that we were communicated with through sound waves. That's how we received communication to our brains that come into our mind, into our spirit, and that can be. And if they're from the next level, then if we adhere to them, if we make them our instructions for our behavior and ways, then they become part of our soul. That's how you fill your soul with the next level mind, by adhering to what they say, what they give us. And what they do is part of that. Because what they say has to do with what we do. Because we need to use these vehicles to exercise those instructions. And make these vehicles subservient to us. Make these vehicles our slaves. Instead of letting them do what they're programmed to do. We're putting in new programming. But we're the decider of what that program is going to be. And we can decide to program it with misinformation. Of course, humans don't know that we have misinformation until we start to learn about the true information is and are willing to accept it. And the next level helps us come to that place to where we can recognize the true information. And then the challenge exists to begin to allow it to come into us and accept it and make it part of our mind, so that we become bonded more with our older members' mind. Which the completion of is the graduation, however that happens. They didn't have to graduate by exiting their vehicles. The next level, T said that you don't have to die to go to the kingdom of God, the next level. And that was evidenced by Elijah and Moses. Tiendo said that Moses didn't leave his vehicle behind, even though people will debate that because they didn't have any indication that he was taken, except that they didn't find his bones or his grave anywhere. And he just walked away, disappeared. So, I don't know how far he got before some people went out to look for him or not, I forgot, I don't remember what it says about that. It might not actually be in the Bible. It might be from the Talmud or the verbal communication that was passed around from person to person from that time. That became actually more of the Jewish religion, the content of the Talmud. I believe, just the same way that Christianity became more about what Paul wrote. And he wasn't even a disciple. So, a first-hand witness is always the best to have. A first-hand witness that wants to witness to the truth as they understand it and tries hard not to enter in distortion to that. I mean, it's kind of inevitable that a first-hand witness is going to, I don't know what like put some of their own mind and the human mind into it. Tiendo said it's even not to justify it, because we try not to. I try not to, and Tiendo tried very hard not to. I don't know if they ever did. I can't say. But they talked about being a clear pipe or a chain of mind, but a clear pipe to where there was no, there was nothing of them that was changing what was coming down the pipe from their older members, from the chief of chiefs. Okay, so their intention was to be a clear instrument, totally clear. But because of the human brain and the programming and the language and probably a lot of things, and I don't know what else, that might be the gist of it, it gets translated down. And I'm not saying I'm translating down to anybody. I'm not doing that. Well, I mean, no, I'm not translating down. I'm just trying to translate what came to us from the older members in these documents past. So this is nothing new. This is all information that was already given, and so I'm not adding my own spin on it. But I can, of course, do that, and in that way, then I am mistranslating unintentionally and misinterpreting and misunderstanding what was intended to be the clear information, and that's why I do welcome anybody that wants to question or debate or challenge or point out to me how Tiendo said this and why that doesn't seem to be what I was saying, or Jesus said this in this other place and doesn't seem to be what I'm saying. I'm open to all that because I got nothing to lose by being wrong. In fact, I've got everything to gain by being wrong, being shown where I'm wrong. And because I can get better on the track, because the track is a narrow track, but getting off it is a wide street. And the more you get on the track, the more you're making your eye single. And then your whole body can be filled with the mind of the next level, the light, the pure light. But, I mean, Tiendo were talking about also how the design of the next level is that the older member isn't so far advanced from the students to where they can't relate anymore to what the students are dealing with. So that's why the older members take a vehicle that has a lot of human experiences, like Do had. And Teeth told Do that, and the class, that this was the case. That Do picked his vehicle in order to have a broad spectrum of what the student body would need to overcome, that he could then speak to with the experience of overcoming it himself. Just like Jesus hadn't overcome when he first hadn't overcome his current human vehicle 100% when he first came, or he would have said, or he wouldn't have said at the end of that task, some 3.5 years later, that I have overcome the world. Well, you know, maybe I'm a little off with that. You know, maybe I know that he had overcome the world before that, many times. He overcame the world when he recovered from his Adam mistake, or you know, missing the mark by not following instructions from the next level, and but he recovered from that through the human vehicle Enoch. That was the 7th generation from Adam, and of course the generations then were much longer in years. But then he came back again as Moses, and he had to overcome the world again. So Enoch had to overcome the world and was taken. They said Enoch walked with God and was taken. So if he walked with God, then that's a way of saying, you know, he was walking in the mind of God. You know, he was going through life as a member of the next level entirely, and so and then when he came back as Moses, he had to overcome, you know, his whatever was challenging him, which he talked about, you know, to Jehovah when Jehovah first told him that he had a task for him. You know, he was like, I don't know how I can do this, you know. So that was, you know, he had to overcome that fear that his vehicle had. And so that was overcoming, and that proceeded through the classroom time, those 40 years or so, to where, you know, he had overcome, and whether he made some mistakes or not, I mean, in his mind, I'm sure he made mistakes, because that's how we grow. We make mistakes that are mistakes to us. But those mistakes that they make, the older members make, are not really mistakes to us. Because their standards are higher. But it's a mistake in their mind because they're comparing themselves to the next level older member, and how they relate to them, which they have more of an understanding of what that is than we have about what that is. And so that's why anyway, I went through that, but so he left as Moses with his vehicle, so he had overcome the world. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been. It probably wouldn't have taken that vehicle with him. I don't know. You know, that's just my common sense. Well, it's not just based on common sense. It's that Jesus said that the only ones that came from the next level are those that went into the next level, took their bodies into the next level. I think I'm getting that backwards, but you can look it up. You see that thought is there, that and that's what happened with Elijah. And he was witnessed to leave with his body, and by Elisha, and the student body was there too at that time. So probably the same souls that ended up being at least the same 24, but maybe more than that. that had graduated from the Moses camp to the Elijah camp, and then to the Jesus camp, and then to the Tiendo camp. And so, by reason of the other voices, trumpet, three angels, by reason of the other disclosure, the remaining disclosures, the after remaining, the after, right? Didn't I say that? After, among, remaining, remnant, residue. That's talking about the individuals that will be left behind after the first fruit leave, I believe is what they're saying, and the disclosures that take place then, which I hadn't seen this before in this way, but it seems to indicate that by reason of the other remaining ones. Well, see, these verses were for now. Most of the Revelation's prophecies, well, I guess essentially all of them, because I don't know anybody, well, I don't know how many people in the classroom joined because of Tiendo knowing that they were the two witnesses, prophecy fulfillment. I suspect anybody that joined because of that probably fell away because it wasn't religious enough for them, if they were thinking about that ahead of time. I don't know exactly. I can't say because we didn't really talk about that. Although we did have a session once where Doe had us tell about our history, anything that stood out in our history, even going back before we joined. I remember telling about some of the experiences I had on LSD, actually, as strange as that is. But that were kind of like kind of spiritual kind of experiences, but or slight hallucinations, not like crazy complete hallucinations, but measured hallucinations. I think I talked about them in my autobiography little thing, Sawyer's Raptured by the, I think I named it Raptured by the Next Level or something like that on my blog. Anyway, but it's not that important at all. But except that Tiendo did instigate that, going back and talking about the past in that case. When before that, the past was prohibited to talk about, and we weren't supposed to talk about it after that. We had to go back to not letting that part of our mind come back into our vehicles. Because we were trying to fluff that mind off. Not trying to erase. Well, yeah, in a sense, trying to erase those memories. By not using them. By not, constantly thinking about them, or even regularly thinking about them. So anyway, so these three angels, these third, other voices, trumpet of the third angels. That's very interesting. Third messengers. It's very interesting. I'm seeing so many more things potentially here. Gosh, I better take my book back and, rewrite it. Take another 15 years, right? I don't think I'm going to be around long enough for that. Which, the, this, that, one, he, she, it. Three angels. Okay, which, which are yet, which to intend, which intend to sound. That's even projecting it in the future, isn't it? Be about to. So it's talking about sounding in the future. Well, of course, the whole thing is talking about the future in the sense of these three angels coming after this. Because this here is at the end of the fourth angel sounding, which I'm not going to go into interpreting that verse, okay, because I won't get back to the woes. But I'll get into that in the future, maybe the next broadcast. So that takes us to Revelation 9, that's saying there's going to be three woes with these next three soundings. And here we go. The fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto earth. Now, the star is falling from heaven unto earth, and to him, or them, is also a translation of the word autos. That star, by other references, the idea of strewing through the sky. Star is like an object that's strewing through the sky. It's like a comet, or it's like a spacecraft falling. See, a comet, I don't know if they would say would fall, because a comet doesn't necessarily look like it's falling. Or a shooting star or a meteor would look like it's falling, because it's going in that direction. It's not like parallel to the earth. And but falling had to do with failing. Lighting on, though, also as part of it. Bringing light on. So the star is bringing light on from heaven, from the elevated areas, from the sky, from the heavens, the literal heavens, from the abodes of the next level. Two, also, against, continual, for the intent and purpose of the earth, or the human kingdom, because the earth includes the occupants of each application. Because I don't think, we're not talking about, this isn't for the physical earth that this is happening. This is happening for the people. So that's why the context is so important. It's the people on the earth that are going to benefit from this star falling from the heavens. So that's like talking about a spacecraft of next level members falling to the earth, and so this is indicating one of the crashes, or can be multiple crashes. It's not, A isn't in the text. They said A as if it's a singular. Frequently the plural is not evident in the Greek. That's why it says him instead of them, potentially. I mean, it could be one person, I guess, that they're talking about in this regard. Because angel could also be messengers, I think. It doesn't really matter. Because if one is coming, the others are coming too, but only one has the task of doing the sounding the blast, or the quavering, the wave. So it's the fifth wave, the fifth sounding wave of the wave. Right, that could be like the fifth sounding, the fifth part of the wave. You know, I mean, you can even look at it that way, I guess. And that's when he saw with his eyes. It's the optima, just like ophthalmologists related to that word. So we know what you're talking about, that John is actually seeing this in his vision, in his dream, if that's what that was, which just seems like the most likely way that he received a lot of information. Tiendo said we did receive lessons through dreams and preparations for our lessons for the next day and things like that. And Do told us about some of his dreams, and I think T told us about a dream or two. And sometimes T and Do had class members tell about their dreams, but they had to ask, they would write a note to Do if they had a dream. They wouldn't tell anybody about it until they wrote a note to Do and asked if they could, well, just told them about it, and then T and Do would decide whether they wanted them to tell that dream to the whole class. And I know Alodi, I can remember one time telling a dream. And I think a few others. I don't remember what a lot of those dreams were. I can remember one of those, which had to do with, he was like awoken in the dream. You're still asleep. Or he awoke with a pain in his buttock, in his seat. They called underwear seat covers. The bottoms of underwear, seat covers. And so his seat, his cheeks of the vehicle, he felt a sharp pain, and he had that pain even when he was awake, when he was talking about this dream, that he had a pain right in that spot. And he didn't say exactly where it was, so I'm not going to try to describe where it was, where the image I got, Because, when someone tells you something, sometimes you get an image of what they're talking about, but you can't count on it. That's why I shouldn't try to describe the image I had exactly. In many cases, it's not necessary at all. So why add it? So I saw a star. See, that's how I can distort things, by adding things like that, and then someone else hears it, and they may remember it as if I was telling it that it was true. And let's say I even forget to qualify it, that it wasn't what Do said. Then someone else might repeat it as what Do said, and basically that's how misinformation can get started. And but that's also like how things can become diluted or changed. And sometimes it can be beneficial, I guess, if it helps somebody understand something that Do said a little better, because T and Do talked about that too, how that all the students, well, they didn't say all the students, they were talking to the whole class though, but it was early on, so there were around 60-something of us, and or maybe it was after a number left, so we were maybe down to the 40s and the high 40s maybe. By the time T left, I think we were down to the high 40s. Maybe even less than that. But anyway, so what she said was that we had strain, and this is on the tapes, in some of the tapes, I think. If you look up strain and boxes in the audio tape index, there's a file that's an index of what's in the audio tapes. And if somebody doesn't have it, let me know, and I'll show it to where I posted it on my blog. I don't think I posted it with that name as index, but I might have if you want to search my blog. But I know I put a link to it in my book. So she talked about how we had we had a book that we were writing that was supposed to be for the people in our strain, talking about the people that were remaining, that would maybe read that book that we were writing, as part of what was left behind by the graduates, assuming that all those individuals would graduate at that point. I mean, taking that attitude, taking that point of view, which T and Do always took that perspective with their students, that everybody that was there could graduate. They refused to think that anybody that was there could not graduate until they were kind of hit in the face with it by the person wanting to leave or doing something that was, usually it was something that they wanted to leave, or they just didn't want to follow procedure, and so it was apparent that they had to leave the classroom. Or like me, in a sense, that happened to, when for some reason, Carlin recently revealed to me that he heard a conversation of Do saying that T had removed some of my recognition of the next level. I'm not sure. I got to go back and get his exact words again. Which is what I was thinking happened, but I was thinking of it as that she sent me a bigger booger, which who knows if that was the same thing or not. I don't know, because perhaps a bigger booger could threaten the amount of recognition I have, and so in that sense, they would know that the bigger booger was going to actually cause me to be challenged to fall. Not that I couldn't have overcome it, because they always said that they never gave us more than we could handle. So I could have handled it. So the dream that Do had, that he told us about, was that he was standing in line which what he thought was the next level line to get something, or I'm not sure what it was for, but the lesson he got out of it for himself, that he said, is that he wasn't so big and important in the next level. That, that everything was working around him. Even though to us that's certainly the case, that everything was working around him. But to him, in relationship to his older member, there were other individuals that were equivalent to him in terms of waiting in line for maybe tasks from the next level or the next task, or I'm just making that up. I don't know what he was waiting in line for. I don't remember him actually knowing what he was waiting in line for, but he knew that he was waiting in line, and he had this pain in his seat. So, well, yeah, I think it was part of it that he actually felt the pain delivered to him in his seat in the dream. So he knew that that pain came from something related to that dream. So the next level was able to do something to make a physical impression on him. That's actually a good reason why to tell this story about this dream, right? And the fact that dreams are used by the next level to give us lessons, like he got a lesson out of it. So anyway, this angel that's sounding, and actually it's saying that the sounding happens, and then he sees the star fall from heaven that is to him given the keys. So that's talking about what happens after the sounding, and that's not immediately after necessarily. That can be years and years after, which I think it is. Well, I don't know in this case if that's what it is, because this is the time, because this is also the time where the bottomless pit is opened, and the Luciferian space aliens are freed, and that started the whole UFO thing, right? And so that was in the late 40s and early 50s. So the fifth angel was in line with the fifth decade from the 1900s. But with the next level, it's a range. It's never just like, it's never said this way as if it's just like 1 year or necessarily just 1 decade. It can be a decade. A five angel, the fifth angel. Yeah, well, Penti. Okay. So this could be accumulatory. In other words, he saw several things, because then it goes on to say, and, so this can also mean like also, and can also mean also, see? But then this other and can also mean also, but now it's talking about the remaining here. Them that, oh, that was in the previous verse. I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself. I didn't know I was going to be translating these verses, but oh, sorry. I think I'm getting tired. Anyway, this is the. I'm not going to go into this anymore because I'm not clear on. I can't. I need to kind of prepare to interpret these again. And I mean, what I was saying wasn't inaccurate necessarily. I'm just saying that the soundings. You know, one of the things that L.A. Marzulli said to me about the reason why Tiendo can't be the two witnesses in his mind, and he's a preacher. He's kind of a New Age preacher because he believes that UFOs are demons. So in other words, he doesn't disbelieve in space aliens. He says they're demons, and he's right. He's right. And I told him we had a lot in common in that regard, and he said, well, I don't know about that. But because he didn't believe that Tiendo, or the return of the next level that was prophesied as the Father and Jesus. And the reason he said that was because he said they come during the sixth trumpet sounding. Six as in S-I-X-T-H. And that the events of the first trumpet soundings hadn't happened yet. Well, now there's some Christians that think that some of those soundings have happened. And I'm not going to go through them right now, but they haven't gotten as far. The ones that I saw talking about it said that maybe the second or third happened already. And I could see how they would say that, but I'm going to wait for another time to actually talk about that. But I'm saying that all the soundings already happened except, well, I'm saying all the soundings have already happened to date. And that we're in the seventh sounding now. But that but they're in line with the way the century was proceeding. in stages, but they weren't equidistant from each other necessarily. I tried to figure it out using all the history. I thoroughly explored history of everything that happened since the mid 1800s. Actually, from 1811 and 12 during the huge earthquake and comet that happened after that, and Tecumseh, and started with a Tecumseh, and all the references there, the evidence of how that might have been stimulated by a next level member to influence that chief of the American Indian tribe, who predicted the downfall of or predicted the war with the Indians, I guess. I'm not sure exactly. I forgot now what he actually predicted, but maybe he predicted the comet or the earthquake. This is what he predicted. He was actually associated with the comet, a comet that happened then, and he made a prediction of an earthquake, and then the earthquake happened, and he was able to rally all the tribes to go against the white man because of that, because he said the white men were evil, and he turned out to be right, didn't he? But not all the white men, of course, but the ones that ended up dominating the world certainly are evil-minded, because they're the pawns of the next level. Not the next level, they're the pawns of the Luciferian space alien fallen angels. The return of the ones who pierced Jesus, as Jesus said in prophecy, would happen. That the ones who pierced him would be returning. He said that, anyway, I'm not going to go into that anymore. But, so the key to the bottomless pit, so when this fall is also, I'm talking about, I believe is talking about the arrival of the next level members as well, some of them, not necessarily all of them at this point. But this is the woe, I think, because the woe is the warning or the grief that's going to come because of the next level's arrival, and how the humans are going to be facing the reality that there are physical beings that are not human, that have amazing spacecrafts, that are among us. That was a major, major change in the psyche of the human kingdom. So I'm saying that was the woe that it says here at the end of all this, where it's describing them. Which I'll go through these another time, because I want to get back to Revelation 11 if I can before I finish this video. 9:12, one woe is past, and this is all talking about, the last thing here is talking about the king of the bottomless pit, the angel of the bottomless pit. That's a fallen angel. That's Lucifer himself we're talking about, and he's got the name Abandon, which is destroying angel, or in the Greek, Apollyon, which is the destroyer. Same interpretation, but Apollyon. So in other words, he's That's maybe related to where that mythology came from a previous civilization when they fell. When they became dropouts from the next level, and not only dropouts, but went against the next level, which is well, in one way or another, that's the direction that's the only direction to go in, is against the next level, unless the next level helps us not go in that direction. I was certainly going in that direction. I could tell. Later, I could tell, because I was writing songs in the music that was talking about how, I remember saying at a little gig I had at a little festival, and I was playing flute with some drummers, and I remember saying over the microphone how the earth could have peace, that it was possible to have peace on earth. So that was the point of view of that wasn't the Tian-Do point of view, or Jesus' point of view, because Jesus' point of view was that on earth you would have tribulation, challenges, difficulties, because it's difficult to overcome the human kingdom, and because you've got adversaries. So he said, you're not going to have peace on earth, when he's talking to his disciples. He says, you need to have peace among one another. Yes, because that's behavior of the next level. To have peace among one another, peace and love among one another. The way you treat others, whether they're classmates or fellow students or fellow seekers or not. They need to be treated with the way you want to be treated. Love your neighbor as yourself. And love is it was the kind of love that the next level was talking about, which was friendly love. It wasn't passionate love he was talking about. He wasn't talking about having sex with other people. Because anybody that has grown up in the human kingdom and has had relationships and things knows that sex and love are two different things. Not that people can't feel love for somebody else and feel to give to somebody else and want to, be there for somebody else and help somebody else and enjoy the physical parts of that with them as part of the human kingdom. That the physical components and the sensuality, the senses of the human body were designed by the next level. So it's not wrong to feel the senses of the human body. But that's part of getting out of your humanness means outgrowing those desires and needs to have those sensory stimulations. And that's part of what we were doing when we were overcoming food, by having different diets and the pink drinks, or our likes and dislikes. Tian-Do would call it that. They called it that many times, that they were giving us things to eat that some didn't like, but Tian-Do felt like were tolerable, and that they could actually even grow to like them. And so that they were getting rid of that old programming and taking on Tian-Do's programming. Even though the food that they were getting to like didn't matter what kind of food that was. What mattered was that the next level determined through Tian-Do that this food was to be put into the diet. And because it was put into the diet, the students would need to accept that as part of the program. So you could say, why, what was the classroom all about? It was all about that mundane kind of stuff, of the challenge of fully accepting and desiring to make the changes in our vehicles and in our minds so that everything that Tiendo gave us was exactly what we wanted to do, 100%. And if we had any thoughts otherwise, those were negative thoughts. Those were thoughts to get rid of, to block, to learn to not even hear them, to actually smell them coming. I'm using the word smell because I think that's what it means. So the sixth angel sounds, and that's when a lot of stuff is talked about, to include talking about the time during the seventh angel sounding. How some of the information from the next level is going to be talked about. Actually, it's in Revelation 10, but it's all still part of the sixth angel sounding. Since I'm talking about the soundings. It says that, but in the days, this is still in the sixth angel sounding, which is the announcement of who's coming and when they're coming and what they're going to be doing. And then it also talks about in each of those soundings what's going to happen during the period of time when the remainder are here, which is us. Which also relates to the time during the 7 vials that are poured out, which doesn't start till the 6th seal. And all the seals are part of the start of the remainder, which started during the 6th sounding by Doe going public as the undercover Jesus returning, surfacing before departure in 1995, 4 and 5, and 6 and 7. So it says, but in the days of the voice of the 7th angel, that's when the mystery of God should be finished. That's when the mystery is finished, during the 7th angel. Well, we just saw in Revelation 11, over here, right after this next verse that I'm going to talk about, Revelation 11:15, it says that, remember, this is after the other woe passed and after the ascension of the 2 witnesses and their crew. They're all gone physically from the earth. And then it says, now the 7th angel sounds. It's the same 7th angel talked about during the 6th angel sounding. And talks about how there's going to be voices, great voices in heaven, saying the kingdom of this world will become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And then it reflects on how the 4 and 20 elders in the past tense sat in the past tense before God, who is T actually. Everybody, all the 38 didn't sit in front of T, but the 24 elders did. and they sat on their seats, which is positions on the spacecrafts, or the seats actually literally in the meetings, because every meeting, well, every formal meeting we had, we sat down for, literally. You know, I'm just, you know, telling it like it is. You can see the seats that Doe is sitting in, those white chairs, when he had one for Steve to sit there. He didn't choose that, I don't think, by reading prophecy, because, I mean, maybe he did. I shouldn't say for sure, I don't know, because, you know, I don't know, but I doubt it. I doubt he spent a lot of time. But I don't know, so I shouldn't really even guess about it, where he got it from. It doesn't matter, because if he got it from prophecy, it's because the Next Level provided it, that terminology. So, those that sat on before God on their seats, they fell on their faces. Well, that doesn't mean that they're falling down on their face on the ground. Although that's what it meant when it was said during Ezekiel's time, because he was so overwhelmed by seeing the Next Level spacecraft and perhaps Next Level members, as Daniel also experienced, that it caused him to just kind of hide. He was so afraid of it. Because it was a fearful kind of experience for him. And the Next Level had to help him with that fear. And Ezekiel, there's a lot in common with Ezekiel and the New Testament. So I think we can count on Ezekiel having been at least a student member of the Next Level. Maybe perhaps an archangel in the Next Level, who might be actually, you know, someone that's not quite graduated. Well, yes, it's someone that graduated into the Next Level, is an adult member of the Next Level. But they may not yet have they may not have performed the task to where they were on the throne, is my guess on that. They had graduated to being a captain of angels. That's what archangel means. So I suspect those Old Testament prophets were captains of angels. And probably also associated with the four living beings that are said in the book of Revelations, use the term beast for, to describe when they're four living beings, but they're in a mammalian body. So that's where the beast part of it comes in. So they fall upon their faces is another way of saying they gave their life. They laid down their body. They laid down their life. And I can show other instances where that seems to be that indication. But so maybe I've gone far enough at this point. Because I actually wanted to go to, where was that again? Oh, I'm in 10 now. Go to 11, then go down here. Oh, I want to say some more about the woes. What am I doing? I'm clicking the wrong button here. want to say something about the woes more. And that is that, well, what is the second woe? We saw the first woe, and I think that it was the arrival of the next level and the arrival of the Luciferian space aliens out of the bottomless pit. So the woe is gonna, I think, have like all the prophecies seem to have, has a next level manifestation, at least one, and a human manifestation, at least one, and I believe a earth manifestation, at least one, or many, because it's also a matter of, for a period of time, each of the woes can also cover a period of time. I don't know how long, but because that's the way the next level does things. They rarely seem to do things within just, a day. Although it does happen. Jesus rose from the dead in 3 days, or 3.5 days. So that was done in days. And Tiendo recovered from their being shot down by the press in 3 days, even though it has multiple meanings also, because that's all prophecy seems to have that as well, a number of different meanings and degrees of meanings and applications of those meanings. So it's amazing, actually, but it's the job of the next level, and this is the job that we would be applying for by growing closer to Tiendo and asking to be on their crew and to be of service to them, and trusting that they will lead us through our separation from the human kingdom in a way that we can handle. And some may have already separated from the human kingdom a lot in that regard, which is evidence of how their soul was around that vehicle, the vehicle they have, for quite a while, maybe from birth. So, but So the other forms of woe that I believe are always associated, seem to always be associated with the next level, are comets. I think there was an indication there of that star being a light that came, an enlightening, or a falling has to do with lighting down on. So actually, that might actually be a better interpretation for that Revelation 11:16, where it says, they fell upon their faces, they lied down. But then it wouldn't say upon your faces. Or it said the star fell from heaven. See, that's like the star bringing the light from heaven. Okay? Which Tiendo did say in the very beginning that, I think they even said it in a meeting, because I remember even repeating that in a meeting, when the first meeting that I gave in Worcester, Massachusetts, that I was the primary speaker for, because my partner, Dan Doty, didn't want to talk. So she ended up being my battery, a helpful battery for me to speak, and I kind of almost went into a trance in a sense, and I remember saying there is a light I said. That was the first words out of my mouth. Coming from the distant heavens, which I got that from Tiendo. And so I don't think that applies the same way, and because falling on their faces, even though it does have application, that the light is coming on their bodies, and actually their vehicle is being subdued because of that, being put into a subservient to that light condition. That's the overcoming process. So you can even see it in that vein as well. But the woes also seem to relate to, notice how this woe is saying that the woe is past, which is talking about everything that happened before this point. And part of what happened before this point was this great shaking that I believe has the evidence of being the 9/11 attacks. And that's also referred to in Revelation chapter 14, I believe, as the two falls of Babylon. Here's another verse, by the way. I was going to show you this one here. Revelation 14:6 says, I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having... See, another angel flying in the midst of heaven. Well, there's only one other angel flying in the midst of heaven. That was during Revelations 9:1. And this other one, which that verse also talked about what was going to happen after to the remaining, and this is talking about after those graduated already that were not defiled with women and they were virgins. They had recovered their virginity. That's what that means. And they were redeemed from among men. They became the first fruits. So after that happened in Revelation 14, and it says that they had no guile, and they told no lies. They had no deceit. That's what that means. No guile. For they are without fault before the throne of God. Help me have no human ways, no thoughts of self, no faults to see. So they don't have faults with others, and so the next level doesn't find fault with them anymore. And so after that is when I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. Well, that's what was said in Revelation chapter 10, that was said, announced, trumpeted, sounded, during the reverberated during the time of the it was said to happen during the time of the seventh angel sounding, that John was going to do it. It says that he was going to have to prophesy, talk about prophecy, speak inspired by the next level, speak the information from the next level. Speak is the key word to prophesy. Need a vehicle for that. And to every nation. And it said in that verse in Revelation 10, that he would be speaking to the kings of the earth. that prophecy. Well, how is it going to get to the kings of the earth? The only way it's going to get to the kings of the earth, that speaking, is if it's in the media, right? And especially in the midst of heaven. That word midst is mid-heaven, but it actually is the highest point in the heavens, which the sun occupies at noon, where what is done can be seen and heard by all. So that's part of the meaning of that, where what is done can be seen and heard by all. So then when you look at the word disclosure and wave and reverberation, it's also important to know that the next level is transmitting radio signals to us, individuals, and to the planet, wherever they want to, whatever radio signals they want to send. It doesn't mean that they send the same radio signal to everybody necessarily. They may send a specific radio signal to one person in particular, and then a different one to another person, or the same one to different people, or the same one to a whole city, or a state, or a country, or the world, or all at the same time. Maybe they send the same thing to everybody all at the same time. I don't know, how they do it. Because I know that Tiendo talked about how humans can pull on next level information and receive ideas for inventions and for technology improvements, for equal rights, for having the strength to start an equal rights movement, because the next level seeded the planet with those thoughts, because they wanted equal rights to exist. Because how would it be if women couldn't be seen as equal with men in this time when we had to overcome gender? See, the female vehicles, they have their function as a vehicle for the next level for souls to use and to spirits to develop within. The fact that they were said to be subservient to man initially, like in the Garden of Eden, was not a negative, because there's a great value to being of service. When you learn to be of service to somebody, then you don't have that big ego to deal with. It's the one that you're being in service to that develops the ego. So the fact that the next level was using the male vehicles for most of the time, relative to the amount of years that the civilization of the garden has been in this experiment, I think is irrelevant to the fact that when it came to the time when the graduation could happen, which started with Jesus, and Jesus gave some pretty strong indications that those 12 disciples were not above the women disciples when they were, commenting about how the one woman disciple, like I said in the last broadcast, was anointing Jesus' head with oil for his burial. And they were complaining that, that could be sold and the money could be given to the poor or whatever, because that was a valuable commodity, the olive oil. And so that was showing that they weren't as advanced as that female disciple. Because just because you got what looks like the head position, as a disciple, apostle, you get to speak and everything, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a more advanced soul than another individual. So any female at any time in the history could have been ahead of the male in terms of their progression towards membership in the next level. But when it comes time to graduate, when they know that it's graduation time, even though that graduation criteria was started with Jesus, Jesus said they weren't ready, and he needed to come back when they were ready, when they would be also coming back to take new vehicles, to be born of water, flesh. So, then one of the criteria is because the next level has no gender. Their vehicles have no gender. We had to prepare our souls for that ahead of time. We had to have that programming in place that there's no gender, so that that wouldn't be like a disease in our next level mind, if that could be possible. Well, I guess it could be possible, because apparently the Luciferian space aliens were given some kind of a next level vehicle that still had the capacity to fall. So since it still had that capacity to fall, some of the programming could be improved upon ahead of time. And that's what Tiendo said was happening now. We were being subjected to the Luciferian fallen angels because they had the thinking and programming and misinformation that they had gravitated to and rejected the true information, so that we would be confronted with that same challenge of thinking that led to their fall. And therefore, we would, in order to graduate into the next level, we couldn't get in because they were raising the bar, Tiendo said, of what it took to get to that same place that the Luciferians had gotten to. So, this was designed to be spoken about now. And here's where it says, and there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. And I think the first fall was the 9/11 attack, because this is Babylon falling, right? And what is Babylon? Actually means, from the Greek word, from the Hebrew word, confusion, it means. And that means that, well, and then there's also, it talks about how there's Mystery Babylon, which I showed a little bit of in the last broadcast or two, I don't know which one it was, had to do with Revelation chapter 17. And you can study that, the reference to the Mystery Babylon, which is the secret condition of confusion that came about as a result of the bottomless pit being opened. I'll go into that in more detail in the future, but I think I've said enough in this broadcast. But also these woes, like I said, are accompanied by comets, and I've got some comets that I think are associated with them. I think Hale-Bopp certainly was what happened, that could be considered the second woe is past, the Hale-Bopp comet. But not only the comet, but everything that happened with that comet. And also there was another comet with that in 1996. I forgot the name of that one. But then there was Comet Kohoutek in 1973. But I'm not saying that was the first woe. Although, like I said, the woes, because comets were always considered to be just like eclipses, are part of this story, actually. And maybe this 2017 eclipse is like one of the big, the third woe, because the third woe was going to come quickly. where the first two woes was kind of quite a while after I'm starting to rethink that. Maybe the first woe, I think, was cometh. Because it came, considerable, time. Well, anyway, I'm not going to go through my reasons for saying that. I'm not sure, but I think the comets that we can see with the naked eye, to me, are the biggest signs from the next level, because we don't have to depend on the satellite telescopes and the telescopes and the astronomers have to see them, because the next level wouldn't want us to rely on those exclusively for the signs that they were giving us. And comets were always seen as signs of like a woe, exclamation, or grief, like coming of something difficult, or a war, or an omen of catastrophe, or but they could also be a sign of the challenge of the next level coming and bringing updated information that's going to be difficult to absorb, and it's going to cause not peace on the earth, because it's going to cause separation of humans from their human family, and that's going to actually create discord, and so the second fall, but the second fall of Babylon, I believe, was the financial crisis during the time of the third seals opening that started with the Obama administration. Actually, it started with the Bush administration. So his administration started both falls, if I'm correct about those being falls. Because the reason I believe they're falls is because I believe they were both orchestrated to happen for a reason. And they were so against the next level. One having to do with, the greed of the treasure, the greed of accumulating all that treasure for all their reasons, that they had to fight against the space aliens or whatever they were thinking at that time. Of course, it trickled down. Everybody that was benefiting from the financial crisis didn't have that in their minds necessarily, but some of them might have thought they were paying for their underground facility that was being built for them, so that they could flee to it in the case that there was a nuclear war or whatever reason. The humans that knew about the space aliens were not necessarily going to tell that to many people, because they know the more people they tell it to, the more leaks there are, potentially. So they keep a lot of that under wraps. Maybe not even telling the presidents. Didn't seem like Jimmy Carter knew about it. And I don't know if Clinton knew about it. I suspect Clinton did know about it, or came to know about it. But so I think that about does it. Good night, folks. I feel like there's some good information came today through this vehicle. I hope it was pleasing to T and Doe. I know they'll let me know, because I want to know if I said anything that was out of place. I can correct it in my next broadcast, and anybody listening to this can help me with that. We've got a big task ahead of us because of the things that are going to be being put into motion. It's not going to be easy, but if we stay with it, step by step, with the next level, we can do it. We can do it. We can get to the place to where we can graduate to our next grade in school, whatever that is. Doesn't matter what that is. If we work our hardest, we will get our just reward. And I've never really done this for a reward. I wish I would have the consciousness of doing it for the reward, because then maybe I would be more inclined to do a better job, not just in talking about it, but in the way I live my life in this vehicle, in the human condition that I'm in right now. I'm in both places. I'm walking on the curb and on the top of the curb and in the gutter at the same time. And it's not that the human kingdom is bad or evil or dirty or any of that. But relative to the next level, it is. Relative to, just like the idea of living with bears in the woods, doing all the same things they do, is repulsive to me. And probably most humans wouldn't want to do that for very long. And doing all the same things that they do. So the human kingdom has become like that too, even though there's a mixture in the human kingdom, because some of the members of the human kingdom are advancing above human. Many are, because this is the time for it. I mean, it's been happening all along, but it's been, it's always very gradual. And so it becomes a polarization, and it's not attached to parties and the, in the government, and it's not a conservative and liberal thing, and it's not about any of that, even though there's characteristics of both that have their place. That came initially from next level thinking, so and behavior and ways. So we can't put down the others really, although everybody's got their lessons to where they can learn from each other. So it doesn't mean that some on one side of the fence have well, you know what I'm saying. So good night.